Good evening, friends. This is Shiba Rakesh welcoming you to yet another edition of the English program. And today we have with us a very, very special guest. With 3 decades of teaching experience at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels, she has been in charge of training minds, steering hearts, and guiding lives. She is an author, a columnist, and a poet. With these laurels and more, I welcome you, Professor Seema Singh Katiyar, to the studios of Akashvani, Lucknow.
Thank you, Shiba.
Professor Saab, you've been a part of the Department of English at the Awadh Girls Degree College, Lucknow for about 3 decades. And so it is obvious that we will talk about women, life, and literature. Let me begin by asking you, you have taught young women for so many years. Has there been any shift in women's psychology when it comes to relationships, romance, and marriage that you have noticed?
Shiba, that is a very important question. You know, literature is deeply rooted in society, and the university has prescribed some wonderful texts, and I have been privileged to teach certain texts that gave me an opportunity to interact with my students, to be able to have their feedback on them. Now, as you know, my career has spanned 3 decades. The first decade was when marriage was the bedrock of social organization, caste continuity, and patriarchal control. And they were largely endogamous, that is within the caste. They were also village exogamous because there was a concept of khandan. So the girl, once married, would move away to a family which would not be close to her own family by way of geographical distance and genetic distance as well. So during this period, these last decades have generally broken the monolith, and there were certain pressures from various areas whereby the institution of marriage itself has undergone drastic change.
Tremendous changes, yes.
Yes. And these factors can be economic liberalization. Then there were legislative interventions, and there were burgeoning digital culture that we are witnessing today. Now, how has the women's attitude changed in these years? In the first decade, I would say that the evolution of women's attitude towards marriage is not as simple linear progression towards modernity. Rather, it is a complex negotiation between enriched and entrenched traditional norms and emerging aspirations for individual agency. So women were always aspiring to break these shackles that they have been experiencing. And looking at the 3 decades from the 90s onwards, I would say that the current decade, I observe a shift from marriage as a sacramental necessity to marriage as an emotionally compatible relationship. Though still, it is overshadowed with structural inequalities between men and women. So the 90s, as I said, it was basically the traditional definition of marriage that we all understand.
Right.
Girls who came in the second decade of my tenure, there were quite a few legislations in between, supported by the government, wherein there was a push for girls' education. And it pushed the age of marriage from what we perceived earlier to be 18, then 20, then 25. And in the last decade, I would say that now the girls also perceive that economical independence is what they are seeking before they enter the institution of marriage. Because that they have come to understand is the foundation of equality in marriage.
You just spoke about the changing dynamics of relationships in society and also about relationship governing values. What changes have you noticed? Now, let me just comment, and this can come across as a negative comment, but that's also a fact that marriages now are falling apart more quickly than ever.
Yes, I agree with you.
What are the changes in values that you have noticed?
The answer here is extremely complex because you see, if marriages are falling apart, there are numerous reasons for this. Mm-hmm. Now, if I stick to the moral values, first of all, there is a conflict between the parental desire and the girl or the boy's desires when it comes to the choice of spouse.
A partner, yes.
Spouse. I would deliberately say spouse because till some time ago, the spouse was the partner. But I can't say this for the last decade. From these sources emanate the conflict, and the resolutions were very difficult. The girls were looking for romantic partners. They were not looking for people who would give them economic security and social security. They were looking for companionship at this point of time. This is the second decade when the education has taken root as the primary requisite for girls to become emancipated on the basis of the 3 foundations I had already enumerated.
So this is to say that once the girls thought or the women started understanding that they could be financially more independent, what they were looking for basically was romantic compatibility instead of social security per se.
Absolutely.
Then came this discrepancy between expectation and the social reality.
Yes.
And that is what has led to the problem of divorces in the
Yes.
country.
There were other reasons as well. This was not the time when the girls had fully been empowered. Sometimes they would succumb to the pressure. Sometimes the boy would succumb to the pressure, and hence there were divorces. This is not yet that absolute emancipatory state.
Professor Katiyar, there is this very interesting change in the society which has come about, and what I understand through what you're telling our listeners, that both men and women at this stage of emancipation, within quotation marks, they had begun to understand that they do not need to adjust anymore to parental pressures or the social pressures. There was a new stream of consciousness coming in, which was more about having relationships according to their own choice. And that became more important and more prominent. Now, this relationship dynamic, does it have anything to do with literature, according to you? And I say so because once upon a time, generations would be influenced by books and cinema.
Shiba, you have been a scholar of literature yourself. Literature mirrors society. It is a result of whatever forces are at interplay in society, and the author is the one who is extremely sensitive to these forces, and then he or she translates those things to paper, which later on comes down into society as texts or books. This literature performs two functions. First of all, it is a result of the forces of society, hence it mirrors society. But ideally, it should also hold mirror to the society and tell people, readers, about society or depict society as it ought to be. These are two important functions of literature. And students of literature, they are absolutely sensitive to these two aspects, whether they know it or they don't know it, perceive it or not perceive it, but they are aware. Now, what happens is when the student studies literature, these forces act upon him or her, and the person has a better concept of society and of oneself too. So this sensitization of oneself and the norms of society or the forces of society as it exists, as it ought to be, it changes people permanently.
Sometimes it so happens that you become a student of literature, and at the end of the day, when you're granted your certificate, so you come out of a class of literature, of Hindi or English or Sanskrit, any kind of literature, you are told, ladki bigad gayi hai, ladka bigad gaya hai. Those kind of things happen when you are into higher education and you especially are a student of literature. Will it be right to say then that a student of literature starts living in ivory towers?
I wouldn't say so. If a girl expects beauty in a future spouse, how is it wrong?
Then it is for the people to understand who say that literature is a tower of ivory, that it is not. And we are living through literature, we are actually living the lives which are very real and which are very solid.
We haven't acknowledged those opinions ever.
Precisely.
We haven't allowed women to express themselves.
And
in
that-
this regard, male beauty has always been out of bounds of women, and they have never articulated it.
Absolutely. And I think one of the best things that literature does to people is make them wonderful human beings. You have always prepared, personally, not only professionally as a teacher, but you have always prepared young women to have a career, to grow and to evolve. But there is one thing that we have always heard. Women have changed. Men have not. Your comment.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Now, when you say women have changed and men have not, I would not just talk about the young girls. I would talk about not just the young girl who is a daughter or a young girl who is going to be a daughter-in-law. I would also talk about the mother who stays at home, the father who stays at home. Because if you had the sense to allow your daughter to progress and change according to the changing times, why didn't you bring up your son or change your attitudes to receive in your family a girl who is a product of another household similar to yours? Do you provide that conducive environment to her as well? Just as you would expect your daughter to receive that conducive environment in her in-laws' place. So the disparity between my expectation as a mother-in-law or a father-in-law from my daughter-in-law, yet having another set of rules for my daughter to receive in another household in which she gets married, now this disparity has to go away. It is immense responsibility on parents because the marital bliss of their child, either girl or daughter, depends on their attitude, their upbringing, and on their behavior as well.
What advice would you like the younger generation to have when it comes to relationships, both personal and social? And not only the younger generation, even people who are dealing with the younger generation.
Shiba, you would agree with me that the current generation is dealing with a lot of drastic changes. When I was growing up, there was this net of love around me where my mother would have all the time for me. My father would be interested in my studies or what I am doing. He would be engaging with me or may not be engaging, but he was there. Now, if you look at today's society, that joint family system, which became a nuclear family, now it is hyper-nuclear family. In these circumstances, what has happened is children have lost that social safety nets. They are no longer cousins. They are no longer peer groups with whom they can unvent themselves or unburden themselves. So first of all, if we elders understand the plight of the children, then that is first step towards understanding younger generation. Because of collapse of these relationships, this young generation has lost that pressure relief valve, right? So what happens is, in their absence, the burden falls entirely on the internal resilience and family units. Now, since we are in a mode where we are hyper-nuclear families, the social system has somehow failed in helping this younger generation deal with these situations. There is lack of protocols or systems wherein they can be taught anger management and negotiation skills. Why anger management? Because such situations arise every day in our families.
Absolutely.
And what we do, since we ourselves do not have any mechanisms to deal with these children's responses, we simply ask them to shut up. We will have to learn how to help them by teaching them anger management and negotiation skills. Now, many a times there are things that the children demand. Mostly we answer yes or no. We do not sit with them. We do not understand their perspective, offer little, take back a little.
Right.
This they need to learn because they don't have as many siblings as they used to have earlier.
Very true.
So now, whatever is there in the family is theirs. They have not learned to share, and I don't blame them for that. So how do we teach them that perhaps what you're demanding is more than what we can offer? There has to be this understanding of each other's perspectives, that sometimes you surrender to their demands and sometimes they surrender to yours, and sometimes both of you meet halfway. So this negotiation skill would go a long way for girls also, to negotiate their relationships, carry them forward without resentment in their marital homes as well.
These are some very, very interesting insights, and I'm sure our listeners would be wanting more. But unfortunately, the clock is showing us that it is time for us to wind up. However, I do have the good share that we will continue to discuss these issues in the upcoming episode of the English program with Professor Seema Singh Katiyar. Till we meet you next Friday at 7:31 p.m., I thank Professor Katiyar for sparing her valuable time to be with us in the studios of Akashvani Lucknow. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Shiba.
And till we meet next, Shiba says, Namaskar.